Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we explore the hidden layers within the stories that captivate us.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're embarking on a journey into a film that, well, at first glance, seems utterly simple and pure. Hayao Miyazaki's beloved My Neighbor Totoro.
Ah, yes, a classic.
Most of us know it for its enchanting visuals, right? The fluffy forest spirits and just the sheer joy of childhood it captures.
It's incredibly charming on the surface.
But what if I told you there's something far more profound simmering just beneath that gentle surface?
I'd say you're absolutely right.
We're going to unpack how a film about two girls and, well, a giant fluffy forest spirit can actually, dare I say it, transform us spiritually.
Even if you, like many viewers, aren't deeply familiar with Japanese religions or maybe the cultural nuances involved.
Exactly. That's our mission with this deep dive, isn't it? To go beyond the delightful aesthetics.
Right, beyond just the cute characters and the beautiful animation.
And explore how Miyazaki masterfully weaves these really profound spiritual themes into the very fabric of Totoro.
Yeah, and this is a journey, we hope, that's sort of custom-tailored for you, the listener. Someone who maybe seeks to gain knowledge quickly, but thoroughly.
Appreciates multiple perspectives and loves those aha moments.
Exactly. Those moments where something just clicks without feeling overwhelmed by, tons of academic jargon.
And to guide us, we've pulled from a stack of incredible sources. We've got deep academic analyses,
Some really insightful scholarly work.
surprising takes from cultural commentators, and even some really heartfelt viewer discussions that show just how deeply this film resonates.
It connects with people from all walks of life. It really does.
What's truly fascinating here, though, is the central paradox of Totoro.
Okay, what's that?
Well, unlike Miyazaki's other big films like Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke,
Which are full of overt supernatural stuff, big conflicts.
right, Totoro is set in a relatively ordinary 1950s Japanese village. It features fewer sort of explicitly supernatural characters.
Yet it still manages to convey such a strong, almost universal sense of spirituality.
That's it. That's the puzzle. How does it do that?
And that's the very heart of what we're going to try and unravel today.
So it's a simpler story on the surface, but with this profound spiritual resonance. What are the specific brushstrokes Miyazaki uses? What's his secret sauce, so to speak?
Well, let's start by setting the scene properly.
Good idea. For anyone who might not be intimately familiar with My Neighbor Totoro, it came out back in 1988.
Right. And the basic premise on the surface is quite simple. We meet two young sisters, Satsuki, who's about 10.
And Little May, who's around 4.
They move with their father to a rural Japanese countryside village. This is set in the 1950s.
And the reason for the move is quite poignant, isn't it?
It is. They're moving to be closer to their mother, who is recovering from an unspecified illness in a nearby hospital.
Their new home, it's an old house, maybe a bit run down.
A little dilapidated, yeah, with a large garden. And crucially, there's this imposing camphor tree standing nearby.
Ah, the tree. Very important.
Very. And the plot just sort of gently unfolds from there. Little May is the first one to spot these smaller, fluffy creatures carrying acorns.
Is little Totoro's way?
Kind of. She follows them, tumbles down this tunnel at the roots of the giant camphor tree.
And that's where she meets him, the big one.
The very large, very fluffy creature we know as Totoro. And the relationship between the girls and these forest spirits slowly develops.
Until that critical moment later on when May goes missing.
Right. And Totoro actually helps Satsuki find her, using the cat bus, of course.
Of course. Can't forget the cat bus. So for many people, the film's huge appeal lies squarely in that slice of life vibe.
Definitely. It really focuses on the day-to-day stuff of the girls' lives moving in, exploring the house, playing outside.
Not some big, dramatic, overarching conflict driving everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Film critic Roger Ebert, who really loved this movie.
He championed it, didn't he?
He did. He put it beautifully. He said Totoro is based on experience, situation, and exploration, not on conflict and threat. He suggested that the wonder of life and the resources of imagination supply all the adventure you need.
That's lovely. And it feels so different from, well, a lot of other animated films.
It really stands in stark contrast to many typical Western animated films, which, have often been described as manically insecure.
Huh. That's quite a phrase.
Isn't it? But you know what it means? They tend to be filled with noisy, busy action sequences.
Right. Always something blowing up or someone shouting.
And these sort of shoehorned bromides about self-esteem, simplistic messages tacked on.
Yeah, I know the type.
Totoro, on the other hand, just exudes this deep confidence in childhood, It trusts the audience, it trusts the story to find meaning in quiet moments.
So Miyazaki is kind of revealing the profound richness that can be found in the everyday.
Absolutely. Proving that true wonder doesn't always need grand battles or obvious villains.
It's a film that truly trusts the wonder of childhood, but you mentioned earlier, beneath that gentle surface, there's this powerful undercurrent, adds incredible depth. What's the unspoken story simmering beneath these delightful day-to-day moments?
You've really hit on a crucial point there. There's that poignant yet often subtextual element.
Mm.
The mother's illness and the girl's underlying anxiety.
It's always there, isn't it? Even when they're laughing.
It is. And while the film was made in '88, its 1950s setting subtly reflects the post-war Japanese period.
Ah, okay. How so?
Well, it suggests a time when people were moving on from the devastation of war, but still under a lingering, unspoken cloud of World War II.
That adds another layer.
It does. It adds this layer of quiet resilience to the family's situation. You see the girls and their father trying to keep up a good mood, stay positive.
Even with that fear and uncertainty sort of resting in their own hearts.
Exactly. Which makes their journey just profoundly relatable, I think.
That's a fascinating observation. It really reframes the simple narrative, doesn't it?
It does. And what's truly compelling here is how the film becomes about more than just childhood wonder. It's also a deeply human story about coping mechanisms. Coping in the face of fear, of loss, of loneliness.
And those are universal themes, aren't they? They resonate regardless of your background or age.
Absolutely. And we've seen, countless personal anecdotes from viewers who found immense comfort and healing in the film while dealing with similar things, family illnesses, loss.
So the fantasy elements, like Totoro himself, they can be seen as the girl's imaginative way to cope.
Definitely. To cope with their real-world stress and provide emotional consolation, it's their way of processing and finding strength.
It's not just escapism, then. It's therapeutic.
In a way, yes. The profound insight Totoro offers us isn't just its charming look, but how it reveals our inherent human resilience.
How magic can blossom even from the quiet anxieties of real life.
Exactly, offering genuine emotional solace. It's about finding hope and comfort in the unexpected, whether it's a giant fluffy spirit or just the simple act of a family pulling together.
Which makes the film a really powerful emotional anchor for anyone navigating uncertainty. But this resilience, this quiet hope, it isn't just internal for the girls, is it? It seems deeply intertwined with the world around them.
Absolutely.
And for Miyazaki, that world nature itself is far more than just scenery, it feels like.
Yeah.
Like a living, breathing, spiritual entity.
That's a perfect way to put it.
How does he weave that concept, nature as a spiritual being, into Totoro?
Well, it really starts with how Miyazaki seems to define ecology. At its heart, ecology isn't just the scientific study.
Right.
It's the study of home, that intricate relationship between organisms and their environments.
Okay, study of home. I like that.
And this concept ties directly into Japanese spirit worship, which is often profoundly connected to physical places, villages, houses, and especially these huge monumental trees.
It's a worldview where nature is an active participant in our lives, not just a backdrop.
Precisely. And you see this immediately with the Kusakabe family's old house.
Yeah, the haunted house.
Right. Initially, it's perceived as haunted by these mischievous soot sprites, the Susuwatari.
Which are adorable, by the way.
They are. But as the girls embrace the house's unique qualities, as they clean it and bring life back to it, it transforms into their new home.
And the sprites seem to accept them or move on.
Yeah, they float away. These sprites, while maybe not traditional yokai in the strictest sense, beautifully embody that playful, mischievous aspect of spirits. They reflect the Japanese aesthetic of Mononoke.
Okay, Mononoke. What does that capture?
It captures the spirits or phenomena that subtly influence the world's natural beauty. The rustle of leaves that isn't just wind, or a sudden shadow that might be something more.
So it makes the very air around the Kusakabe house feel alive.
Exactly. It's a sense that even seemingly inanimate objects can possess a kind of life force.
And then there's that magnificent camphor tree.
Yes. The tree.
It's not just a tree, is it? You mentioned it's a power spot.
Right. Posapoto in Japanese.
Yeah.
This term became quite popular in Japan, maybe around the 80s.
And what does it mean exactly, a power spot?
It refers to places believed to embody spiritual energies from the earth. Originally, it might have described specific shrines or temples with special spiritual connections.
Oh.
But with the rise of the environmental movement, it expanded to include natural phenomena, like rocks, rivers, and especially giant, ancient trees.
So the tree itself is seen as a place where spiritual beings, or kami, might descend.
That's the idea. And Miyazaki dedicates significant screen time to portraying that camphor tree as this ever-present, almost watchful character. It embodies wisdom, strength, protection.
It really is a pivotal study of home for the girls, isn't it? The whole plot subtly revolves around it.
It does, and many of the mystical characters live in or around it.
The profound insight here seems to be that spiritual power spots aren't just ancient shrines tucked away somewhere.
Right. They can be the natural wonders in our own backyard, so to speak, waiting for us to recognize their inherent wisdom and protective presence.
It definitely challenges a more Western-centric view where spirituality is often confined to specific religious buildings.
Exactly. And this highlights that deep cultural understanding where nature isn't merely a backdrop, but an active participant. It influences the story, the characters.
A stark contrast to many Western narratives where nature is often just scenery or maybe something to be conquered.
hmm And Miyazaki also shows this deep appreciation for village life. It feels reminiscent of medieval Japanese scrolls or ukiyo-e prints.
That traditional aesthetic.
Yeah, and pre-modernization, Japanese villages were often seen as sacred groves where kami would visit.
So Totoro, being made in '88 but set in the '50s, it's offering this nostalgic look back.
Yes, a look at a time before, as some commentators put it, spiritual confusion set in due to rapid modernization, a time when spirituality was just a natural, integrated part of village life.
And the film really beautifully emphasizes the communal aspect of the village, too.
It does, that collectiveness and cooperation, especially in times of need. Like when Mei goes missing, the whole village turns out to search.
It's a portrayal of society and nature living in a kind of symbiosis.
Right. One scholar, Sonoda Minoru, talked about how the rapid economic growth in Japan from the 60s to the 80s caused severe environmental damage
Okay.
and led to the disintegration of these hometown communities and that spiritual confusion. So Miyazaki, through Totoro, provides this nostalgic glimpse into a time when villages hadn't lost that spiritual merit.
It's an ecological message, then, but deeply intertwined with human connection and community.
And this is absolutely key. Miyazaki's films often depict humanity's complex relationship with nature, sometimes destructive, sometimes idyllic harmony,
He contrasts that Western view of wild nature versus culture.
with a more Shinto-infused ecology that emphasizes humans and nature functioning together, mutually.
We see that beautifully in the relationship between the girls and Totoro, don't we?
We do. They need his help, certainly, finding Mei.
But they reciprocate. They give him the umbrella in the rain.
Right. And they help plant the seeds he gives them. It demonstrates that if humans and non-humans can live side by side, in harmony, with mutual respect for each other and for nature.
That becomes a basis for spirituality to thrive.
Exactly. Miyazaki's vision isn't about human dominance over nature. It's about coexistence, shared benefit, which is a profoundly spiritual ideal, really.
What's particularly insightful, I think, is Miyazaki's deliberate choice to just linger on natural phenomena.
Yes, like a leaf floating down a river or watching the sprouts grow overnight.
He declares right from the beginning that the ecology, the environment, will be as important as the main characters.
And doing that emphasizes nature's inherent importance. It encourages you, the viewer, to think outside of himself, as one analysis put it.
It's an ecological message of just noticing nature for its isness or suchness.
Exactly. That concept from Zen Buddhism. Just appreciating things as they are. It's almost like Miyazaki is gently saying, look, this is what you might be missing. Slow down and truly see.
The intention feels like it's to resensitize us to the spiritual quality of nature.
To show how enchanting it can be to a young child, and by extension, how it could be to us if we let it.
And you mentioned earlier how the English dub sometimes changes the girls' exclamations of wonder into logical questions.
Right, which really highlights that difference in perception. Maybe a Western tendency to see nature as wild or foreign, something to be understood rationally.
Versus a Japanese sense of wonder, a spiritual ecology that's deeply embedded in the culture.
Yeah. The nature in Totoro isn't wild or other from humans and culture. It's in harmony with them. It's open for humans to step into that spiritual world.
If their kokoro is pure, we'll get to kokoro soon, I promise.
Right. And even the old house Satsuki and Mei move into.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it intrudes on nature. If anything, nature is sort of taking it back when they first arrive.
With the soot sprites, the crumbling walls.
Yeah. The film really strengthens that idea. If humans and non-humans can live side by side harmoniously with mutual respect, Well, spirituality can truly thrive.
It's a powerful ecological message embedded right into the animation itself. Okay, now let's turn our attention, as promised, to the heart of childhood in this film and how it connects specifically to Shinto beliefs.
Great.
At the center of it all is Totoro himself and the question of his spiritual nature. You mentioned kami earlier.
Right, the central Shinto concept of kami. These are spirits or perhaps essences with the ability to occupy objects or living things. They're often worshipped as gods or sacred spirits.
Now, Totoro doesn't quite fit the typical image of a traditional Shinto kami, does he?
Not exactly, but he definitely embodies their essence as a keeper of the forest, a mori no nushi. He's this benevolent, protective presence tied intimately to the land, to that specific place.
But here's where it gets really interesting. His name.
Yes, the name Totoro.
It isn't Japanese?
Nope. Little May mispronounces Toru, which is the Japanese transliteration of troll.
A troll, like from European fairy tales.
Exactly. Specifically, it seems to be a reference to the Three Billy Goats Gruff, which we actually see the mother reading to the girls in the end credits sequence.
Wow, I never caught that. So why choose a non-Japanese name, a reference to trolls?
Well, the thinking is, it likely reflects Miyazaki's desire for Totoro to appeal universally to children.
So he didn't want to require prior knowledge of specific Japanese mythology.
Probably not. He wanted to create something accessible, lovable to children everywhere, transcending cultural specifics while still embodying those universal spiritual qualities of nature spirits.
That makes sense. Yet despite the name's origin, the film subtly incorporates Shinto traditions.
Oh, definitely. For example, Setsuki's desperate act of praying to Totoro for help finding Mei.
Right, she goes to the camphor tree and pleads with him.
That act directly mirrors the Shinto tradition of praying to kami for help or intervention. It's not presented as an explicit religious ceremony.
No, it feels very spontaneous, very heartfelt.
Exactly. It's a plea to a higher, benevolent power associated with that sacred place. And this demonstrates the film's portrayal of the value in these traditions, the comfort, the hope they provide.
Without promoting the religion didactically, it's not trying to convert you.
No, it's just showing it as a natural, intuitive part of their world, a reflection of a deeply ingrained cultural practice of seeking help from the spirit world in times of need.
And this leads us right to that crucial concept you mentioned, kokoro,
Yes, kokoro.
which means heart in Japanese.
Literally, yes. But in a Shinto context, it often refers to something more specific, the pure, innocent, and cheerful state of a child.
Okay. And this pure kokoro, that's key.
It's key because it's what makes children ideally receptive to kami. It's why the girls, especially younger Mei, are able to see and interact with Totoro while most adults cannot.
Because everything is new and exciting to them. Even finding an acorn is like finding treasure.
Precisely. Their innocence, their appreciation for small wonders. It's emphasized not as childish naivete, but as a deeper form of perception.
So the real aha moment here is realizing that Totoro might be suggesting our deepest spiritual connection isn't about grand revelations or complex theology,
but about maintaining or maybe reconnecting with that pure, open, unburdened heart of a child.
a state of wonder that allows us to perceive the unseen.
And Miyazaki portrays this purity quite literally sometimes. Think about the scenes where the family is cleaning the house together.
Yeah, it feels joyful, almost like a ritual.
It does, an act of purification. Or when they take that long communal bath after a tiring day of moving and exploring. It suggests that cleaning the house brings back the kokoro of the house itself.
As if their pure spirits, their kokoro, are actually revitalizing the abandoned dwelling.
Making it receptive to friendly spirits, like those soot sprites who then decide to leave.
This raises a really interesting question that the film subtly explores.
Leche.
Does the transition into adulthood, with all its increasing responsibilities and pragmatic concerns, does that affect our spiritual connection?
Yes, that's definitely in there. We see Satsuki, the oldest sister, grappling with the weight of looking after Mei, worrying about her mom.
And sometimes she struggles to find Totoro when she's alone or feeling that pressure, right?
Exactly. It shows a kind of temporary dimming of her connection. And Granny even explicitly mentions that she used to see soot spirits when she was little,
But stopped as she grew older.
clearly tying the ability to see spirits to age and perhaps the loss of that completely unburdened kokoro.
So the film seems to suggest that kokoro might become weaker the older one
or
gets.
perhaps just less easily accessed. Mei, being younger, has almost a direct line to Totoro's world, doesn't she?
Yeah, she just wanders right in.
Miyazaki shows us that becoming an adult can mean leaving behind the world of spirits and dreams where the extraordinary becomes ordinary.
Satsuki's journey really highlights that tension between childhood wonder and adult responsibility.
It does, that struggle to maintain that innate spiritual receptivity as the demands of life increase.
Yet the film isn't totally bleak about it, is it? It doesn't feel like a tragedy that Granny can't see them anymore.
No, not at all. It simply acknowledges this natural progression, perhaps,
Yeah.
and the prevalence of Shinto symbols in that 1950s rural setting.
Yeah.
It's just part of the landscape.
Like the little torii gates marking sacred spots.
And the Shimenawa ropes, those braided ropes often with paper streamers, that establish the camphor tree as a kamiza, a sacred place for kami to reside or descend.
Seeing a shrine is just as natural as seeing someone working in the rice paddies.
Exactly. Totoro's world allows the spiritual to surprise you at any time. Seeing a kami or a spiritual creature is presented as being just as likely, just as possible, as seeing a normal person.
It's a seamlessly integrated spiritual landscape.
A world where the veil between the mundane and the magical is exceptionally thin, particularly for those like the children who have that pure kokoro.
This inherent belief in the spiritual world, especially the idea that everything might have a life force, brings us nicely to the concept of animism.
Right, which is pretty central to many of Miyazaki's films.
So animism, that's the belief that spirits inhabit all living things, and maybe even objects, too.
Yeah, essentially, it's a belief that's been central to Japanese culture for thousands of years, deeply interwoven with their relationship to nature.
And Miyazaki portrays this through all his non-human characters and spiritual beings, right? From the soot sprites in Totoro to, say, the river spirit in Spirited Away.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating here is how Miyazaki applies the concept of anima, the essence or the soul, to literally everything that has being.
Everything.
Pretty much, suggesting that existence in the universe is itself a special, even spiritual state.
Wow. Okay, so that means everything is.
Equally deserving of ethical treatment, as one scholar put it, whether it's a giant tree, a river, an abandoned house, or even a seemingly strange spirit.
Like No Face in Spirited Away, he's not just a simple villain.
Exactly. He's complex, has vulnerabilities, motivations. Miyazaki refuses to paint characters in simple black and white. He extends that ethical consideration, that empathy, to all beings.
So the key insight from this animistic worldview is that it fosters a profound sense of respect for all of existence.
And crucially, in Miyazaki's films, the spiritual world is never portrayed as, like, irrational or just imaginary.
No, it feels real, tangible.
It's a real place that characters experience physically. Mei sleeping on Totoro's stomach isn't just a dream sequence.
Right. And Chihiro working in the bathhouse in Spirited Away isn't a hallucination.
These are concrete experiences within a spiritual dimension that exists alongside and often intersects with the human world.
Which makes the spiritual elements feel grounded and believable, even when they're fantastical.
Now, Totoro's approach to human-spirit interaction is definitely gentler than in some of his other films.
Yeah, in Spirited Away, humans are often in danger of being eaten or transformed.
And in Princess Mononoke, humans are actively causing destruction to nature's spirits and facing the consequences.
But in Totoro,
It's much more benign, but it's still made clear that only a few can access the spirits at will, mainly the younger, purer souls.
which encourages that sense of respect towards all beings, because you never know, right? Spirits might inhabit them.
Exactly. And the film's 1950s setting, recalling Japan's agricultural history, emphasizes that intimate relationship with the land.
Which subtly critiques modernization, maybe, which led to a more impersonal relationship with nature, severing that connection.
That reading is definitely there. And this animistic connection also links beautifully to a concept of healing in the film.
How so?
Well, think about Granny's homegrown vegetables. They seem bursting with life, don't they?
They do, and May trying desperately to bring that ear of corn to her mother in the hospital.
These natural foods feel imbued with a kind of spiritual and physical healing power, a direct result of a respectful relationship with the land.
And Totoro himself literally helps plants and trees grow in that magical nighttime ritual sequence.
Right. Linking humans and spirits through agriculture, through nurturing growth, emphasizing mutual gain through respect for the Earth's cycles. It's a very holistic view of well-being.
This brings us to something called film phenomenology. Sounds complex.
It's basically the study of the sensory experience you, the viewer, have from watching a film. It often emphasizes atmosphere and emotional responses over just plot points.
Okay. And how does Miyazaki use that?
He masterfully uses countless shots of the quiet village landscape. He lingers on natural environments.
We talked about that lingering.
Right. And doing that creates a spiritual tension. It loads every scene without human characters, with the potential for spirits to be there to inhabit seemingly dead things.
It's a way of making the unseen feel present.
Exactly. A powerful cinematic technique.
So what does this all mean for you as the viewer? It's almost like Miyazaki is saying, again, look, this is what you are missing. Look closely, pay attention.
And you will find the sacred in the mundane. He uses specific techniques to draw you into this animistic atmosphere, making you feel the subtle presence of spirits.
Can we look at a specific example?
Sure. Let's consider that very first night the family spends in the house. Satsuki goes out to collect firewood.
Right, and this strong gust of wind blows it all away.
An aggressive wind. And the camera pans slowly over the briskly blowing trees in the darkness. It creates this really chilling and anxious atmosphere.
Yeah, it feels a bit scary.
And we follow Satsuki's fear. The pan over the forest reflects her perspective, what film scholars call internal focalization.
So it pulls you, the viewer, directly into her state of mind.
Exactly, making her fear palpable, making the potential for spirits undeniably real, not just an abstract idea. You don't know the spirit's intentions at that moment.
But then the father laughs it off, and the mood shifts.
Right. His laughter dispels the fear, and the soot sprites float away, suggesting maybe the tree's spirit welcomes them because of their light-hearted spirit. It shows how spirituality can be eerie or helpful, not just one thing.
Miyazaki really manipulates our perception through the camera, through the sound and lack of sound.
He does. Another powerful example is the iconic rain and bus stop scene.
Ah, yes, waiting for Dad.
The sound of rain is closely linked to spiritual elements throughout the film, and the atmosphere darkens dramatically. The music often disappears.
Creating this deep sense of suspense, anticipation.
And May's initial fear at the little Inari shrine by the bus stop,
Yeah.
plus the fact that the bus stop is literally named Inari May in front of Inari, signals it as a deeply spiritual place.
It heightens the expectation that spirits might appear.
Definitely. And just the passivity of waiting scenes like that also builds anticipation. It draws you into the potential of the unseen.
So he creates this undeniable, tangible presence for the spiritual world, even when the spirits themselves aren't directly on screen.
Through masterful use of sound, silence, environmental focus.
Yeah. Now let's explore how Totoro seems to be this tapestry woven from various Japanese folk beliefs, and also how Miyazaki, as an auteur, imbues the film with his personal vision.
Okay, so Japanese folk religion, it's often described as a fascinating blend. You have little traditions.
What are those?
These are more like native beliefs tied to community life, local customs, specific places.
And they mix with.
Great traditions like formal Buddhism and institutional Shinto.
And Miyazaki illustrates this mixture.
He does, subtly, through the film's symbolism, showing how these different spiritual paths just coexist naturally in that 1950s rural setting.
Like the Inari shrine you mentioned.
Which is distinctly Shinto, with its red torii gates.
And the Jizo statues, the ones Mei is found near later.
Exactly. Jizo Bodhisattva is Buddhist, often seen as a protector of children and travelers. They're just there, part of the landscape, reflecting this natural commingling of beliefs.
So this raises an interesting question. Why does Miyazaki choose to portray these various folk religious beliefs side by side?
Well, it seems like it's not about favoring one tradition over the other. It's more about an acceptance of all beliefs.
Showing that spirituality doesn't have to mean choosing one path exclusively.
Right. It can be used for one's own benefit. Maybe emotional consolation, maybe appeasing local spirits, maybe just connecting to a deeper tradition. It's practical spirituality in a way.
And Totoro himself, as this benevolent nature spirit, does he fit into folk beliefs?
He definitely resembles a type of forest spirit found in folk beliefs, sometimes called hidogami. These are often benevolent nature spirits tied very closely to a specific piece of land, acting as protectors.
So he fits that mold, even with the troll name.
In essence, yes. And what's particularly insightful here is how Miyazaki, as an auteur, a director whose personal vision and recurring themes run through all his work.
Right. You can always tell a Miyazaki film.
Exactly. He uses this rich cultural background to express a really strong sense of nostalgia.
Nostalgia for what, specifically?
Particularly for the disappearing rural villages of Japan. Remember, Totoro came out in '88, depicting the 50s, a time Miyazaki himself lived through, and saw undergoing rapid modernization and urbanization.
So the film becomes a kind of spiritual nostalgia.
That's a great term for it. And ecological nostalgia, too. Nostalgia for a time when agriculture and spirituality were intimately related.
When there were maybe rituals for sacred farm work, prayers for pure water, healthy crops.
And that strong community solidarity rooted in shared beliefs and reliance on the land.
This film seems to profoundly embody that Japanese sentiment of furusato.
Ah, yes. Furusato.
Which means hometown or something more.
It's more than just hometown. It's like homeland of the heart. It's an idealized image, often, of traditional village peace and harmony.
Usually nestled around shrines and temples.
Right. A place of family intimacy, timeless virtues, established festivals that mark the seasons. It's a powerful cultural ideal.
And the utopian village we see in Totoro perfectly embodies this ideal furusato.
It does. It connects that folk religious spirituality directly to sentiments of mutual aid, community healing.
Healing not just for the sick mother in the film,
but indirectly, perhaps, for modern Japanese urbanites watching the film, who might feel a sense of loss for those vanishing traditions and connections.
So the film portrays the village as this ideal healing space, a spiritual anchor in a rapidly changing world.
And it's not just the themes. Miyazaki's directorial style itself contributes to this feeling. He employs that unconventional narrative style, right? It really dissociates from the classic Hollywood style of filmmaking by using a much slower pacing, especially noticeable in Totoro.
That deliberate slowness. It's not a flaw, is it?
Not at all. It emphasizes the tranquility, the peace of village life. It invites you, the viewer, to slow down too, to absorb the atmosphere, to just be in that world.
And this approach also allows Miyazaki to, as you said, deviate from the main characters sometimes.
Right, to focus on natural elements, trees, rivers, wind, rain.
Which emphasizes that potential for spirits to appear, that animistic quality we discussed.
Exactly. And this separation from the expected narrative structure where every scene must drive the plot forward creates a unique kind of tension in the audience due to the unpredictability of the storyline.
You're engaged, but not through constant action.
No, it's through quiet anticipation, through a deep appreciation for the world he's meticulously built. It's a hallmark of his authorship, really.
It invites a more meditative viewing experience, maybe.
I think so, definitely.
Okay, as we start to bring this deep dive toward a close, let's talk about Totoro's enduring message and its truly universal appeal. The film seems to offer a really radical portrayal of childhood, especially when compared to a lot of Western animation.
It does, and some analyses point to an East Asian four-act narrative structure called Kishitenketsu being at play.
Kishitenketsu. Okay, how does that work here?
Well, simplified. First, a benevolent childhood world is established.
Yeah.
Then, a minor threat or complication arises from the adult world, the mother's illness worsening slightly. Shusuke. Then there's a turn or twist, May gets lost, 10. And finally, childhood prevails as the girls appeal to magical elements, Totoro and the Kappas, for help, resolving the immediate crisis, Getsu.
So through this structure, Miyazaki seems to be suggesting that childhood is the answer.
In a way, yes. Or at least that the foundation for a truly strong sense of self is to be found in childhood, in allowing children to be children, with all their imaginative resources and emotional depth.
It's not about escapism, then, but about recognizing the innate strength and perception children possess.
Exactly. And he expands on this in other works, too. Think about Spirited Away. Chihiro finds her self-esteem, her strength, through hard work, responsibility, and connection with others.
Not through someone just telling her she's special or focusing only on herself.
Right. And even in his latest, The Boy and the Heron, the protagonist seems to develop self-esteem through finding connection with seeming obstacles, not defeating them in a traditional sense.
It's a whole philosophy of engagement, empathy, interconnectedness.
Rather than individualistic conquest or simple self-affirmation, the core takeaway seems to be Miyazaki's belief that authenticity, resilience, spiritual insight, these are cultivated by embracing the world, connecting with it, not battling against it.
So in essence, Totoro acts as this powerful coping mechanism
For both the characters within the film and for us, the audience.
especially perhaps for those dealing with difficult life events like illness or loss.
Its profound healing power seems to stem from that portrayal of unconditional family love.
The mutual aid you see from the community, like Granny and Kanta.
And, of course, the comforting presence of spiritual guardians like Totoro and those Jizo statues.
That feeling of being cared for, whether by a giant fluffy spirit or just a kind neighbor, it's deeply comforting.
And universally resonant, I think.
Which brings us back to that question. Despite all the specific Japanese cultural and religious elements we've discussed, how does Totoro still manage to convey its spiritual message so universally?
It's a great question. And I think the answer lies in the fact that Miyazaki emphasizes the values that these religions or beliefs represent.
Rather than just focusing on the specific practices or symbols themselves.
Exactly. For instance, even if you, as a viewer, don't know anything about Jizo Bodhisattva or his specific role in Buddhism.
That scene where Mei is found sleeping peacefully by the row of Jizo statues still clearly conveys protection, safety, a sense of being watched over.
Absolutely. And even without understanding the nuances of kami in a formal Shinto context, Totoro is clearly recognized by everyone as a benevolent spirit connected deeply to nature, offering comfort and aid.
The film speaks directly to the human heart, doesn't it? Not just the intellect or cultural knowledge.
It really does. It's brilliant how Miyazaki navigates this. He portrays the value of spirituality through these universal themes we can all connect with.
Appreciation for nature,
The purity of heart,
respect for all beings, big or small.
and the fundamental healing power of connection to family, to community, to nature, and maybe to something beyond the visible.
He creates an experience that really transcends cultural barriers, inviting everyone to tap into these profound, shared human experiences and emotional truths.
So just to recap, we've explored how Totoro masterfully blends ecology, Shinto concepts like kami and kokoro, animism, and Japanese folk religion.
All filtered through Miyazaki's distinctive, nostalgic, and meditative directorial style.
To convey this really profound yet gentle sense of spirituality.
And his original intent, which seems partly rooted in an opposition to the rapid modernization and pollution he saw in the 1980s.
It still resonates profoundly with today's audience, doesn't it? Especially now in the context of global warming, climate change, a sense of disconnection.
That underlying message feels perhaps even more urgent. Our need for maybe a simpler life, a reconnection to nature, and finding the spiritual qualities within it.
It holds up incredibly well.
And as you reflect on this journey through My Neighbor Totoro, maybe the deepest magic of this film isn't just in seeing the spirits.
What is it then?
Perhaps it's in realizing that by approaching the world with that innocent awe, that open heart, that humility of a child, we can rediscover the spiritual connections and the simple joy that are already all around us.
Just waiting to be seen, waiting for us to notice.
Exactly. So a final thought for you to ponder. What will you notice next time you slow down and simply look at the world around you?